What if the secret to success wasn't just talent or hard work, but unshakable confidence? Welcome to Grasp Confidence, the podcast where visionary thought leaders, speakers, and entrepreneurs unlock the mindset and strategies for lasting success. I'm your host, Tara LaFawn Gooch, CEO, two-time best-selling author, and international TEDx speaker, and I can't wait to help you step into the most powerful version of yourself. Let's dive in. What if burnout isn't a mindset issue, but a biological signal from your nervous system? Dr. Susie Hansley has discovered her burnout wasn't weakness. It was complex trauma wired into stress psychology. Now she translates neuroscience into tools that reduce organizational stress by nearly 30%. And it will help you dramatically reduce your stress as well. This conversation will change how you understand stress, resilience, and human biology forever. Okay, Susie, welcome to the show. I think we've left them with a lot of hang notes on that. People are excited to hear. Welcome to the show, Susie.
Well, thank you for having me, Tara. Thank you so much to the Grasp Confidence audience for listening in. I'm so excited to share about this topic.
You know, we hear so often, change your mindset. It's your mindset. Fix your mindset. How often do you hear that? You know, anytime you're scrolling on Instagram, on social media in general, how it's every other post, isn't it, Susie? About
it is. It's and I don't even mind the idea of changing our mindset because we can do that. But we have to be able to do it from a place of like nervous system safety. Because a lot of the time we are trying to operate on top of a lot of cortisol. And when we have a lot of cortisol in our bodies based on past things that have happened that we haven't really resolved, or just through habit of constantly being driven, and we get cortisol driven, it's really hard, if not impossible, to change how you think, because in those moments, your prefrontal cortex is offline. We actually have to ditch some cortisol and feel okay before we can change our brain. And so one of the things that I like to say is that changing your mindset is fine as long as you have a regulated nervous system. So the things that I take issue is when people say mindset is everything, because it's not. If you're not regulated and you're trying to change your mindset, it's like putting lipstick on a pig.
Ooh, that's a good analogy. Okay, so this is really important conversation just for anybody listening, right? Regardless of where you are in your career, your life, your organization, whatever, because I feel like a lot of people are under stress, right? And it's that stress, it's that cortisol-driven lifestyle that so many of us are living right now. And it really puts us in that fight or flight mode, doesn't it? And
Or freeze.
Yeah. And are we operating at a high level thinking with our prefrontal cortex when we're in fight, flight, or freeze?
No, we're not. And I'll just maybe it'll be useful for me to share what stress is and what burnout is, and why there is what happens when we are in fight, flight, or freeze. So basically, stress is any organism response, whether we're going to the one-celled amoeba all the way up to us. Stress is the response that comes when we sense we're not safe. So again, this is a safety, unsafety. And it's really like almost like a off and on, like you're either feeling safe or you're not. Over time, it starts to get a little bit muddled and you have moments of safety, moments of unsafety, but it really is that kind of thing. And so any organism is going to go through what's called a stress cycle. And there's 4 phases. So phase 1 is the trigger. There is a sense that there's potential danger. And I like to say potential danger because, let's be honest, most of our triggers don't actually cause us death. I mean, we're still here. So either they weren't actual danger or we escaped it. So yay us, right? But
So
that first,
it's like a perceived danger?
it's
Is
a
that what
perceived danger, right? So
Mm.
let's think about, you hear a loud sound. It is going to automatically startle you if that is not a sound you are expecting. You might think it's a gunshot, or you might think it's anything, but if it's unexpected, it's going to catch your attention. So it's anything that our senses sense. If you smell smoke, it's going to catch your attention. Things like that, or gas. And then there's other kinds of things that for us will be a trigger. Um, Maybe you walk into a meeting and your boss is like this,
Ooh, yeah,
right?
with arms crossed,
Yeah, or her arms
defensive.
crossed, or yeah. Or and so then that could be a trigger, like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Or what's wrong? Or I'm about to get fired. And so triggers are anything that feel like a threat, right? And for mammals like us, the threat doesn't have to be threat to life. It's also threat to pack expulsion. Because as mammals, we have we're talking hundreds of millions of years of evolution, where we who are still here today have a hardwired response to feel threatened, to be scared when there's any kind of sign that we might get kicked out of the pack. So
Like, kicked out of our community or
yeah, like not belonging. That's actually a
Oh.
hardwired thing. It's not a psychological problem that you shouldn't hear what people think. It's actually smart biology, because that is how we have evolved.
Mm.
So the other thing that I think is interesting is that it's still important even to this day that when we come out of the womb, we're helpless. And so part of our hardwiring is we have to adapt to our caretakers in our society. So that's going to be really important. If you have a caretaker who really hates that you're emotional and they keep telling you to stop crying, you're going to learn to suppress that, right? Because you don't it's very important that you belong. So all those things, boys don't cry. Boys learn to suppress emotions. We learn from our culture, from our caretakers, before language, what's accepted or not, because those triggers, again, it's not just words, it's the things that we sense with our senses. And we have universal ways in which we can read people's emotions and intentions. So if you know what it's like to walk into a room and there's some bad energy because people are mad, or you're just going to be like, ooh, that's going to trigger. And notice how safe that is to know, to be triggered, so you're not walking into some literal ambush or emotional ambush. So those are the triggers.
Wow. So what you're saying is that, innately we have these internal alarm clocks. It sounds like almost, right? Like an alarm clock to tell us something could be dangerous and to
Yeah,
kind of watch out
yeah, and it's unconscious. I mean, one of the things that's super fascinating is, for example, you could be
in a coma.
in a coma,
Wow.
and this was one of those things that I remember reading about when I was reading on trauma, and how there was this kid who was in school. He was like a school age kid, and he kept having these panic attacks when he had this one teacher, and they couldn't figure it out. And then one day, he ended up in the hospital because his stepdad had beaten him up. It turned out the stepdad was abusing him.
Wow.
And the teacher went to visit him. The kid was in a coma and his vitals started jumping. It turned out that the teacher was wearing the same aftershave as the stepfather. So
What?
that, yes.
Oh my
So
gosh.
so this is all super unconscious what we do. So we can't really prevent triggers, but they're actually a really good safety measure, because your body remembers on an unconscious level the things that could have caused you harm, and it's going to create a trigger if there's a pattern match, because our brains are pattern matching organs. Our
Mm,
senses will pattern match.
that is so true. The reticular activating system, right?
Yep.
It's always looking for the normal, looking for patterns, looking for things like that. So I think you're so right on. And I don't think this kind of conversation happens enough because we think it's all our fault. And
Yep.
right, we feel it makes us feel
Yes. goes, a friend of mine, she'll do this thing. It's like, yep, you touch your nose and you point, you're like, you got it.
Yes, it makes us feel so alone because we think, this is a problem and am I ever going to change? Is this ever going to change? Is it ever going to get better?
Right. And so I want to tell you about the next 4 stages of that stress cycle so you understand fully what's happening and where we human beings don't fully complete it. And that's why we get stuck in stress and burnout. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
So the trigger was step 1. And
Okay.
for those
Trigger.
of you listening and not watching, I'm just,
Mhm.
I'm pretending I'm like an amoeba on my hand. I'm moving my hand around. I'm like, I'm just, living my life. And suddenly there's a trigger. And I'm going to start putting that hand up like I'm going up a hill. So that hand is signifying, oh gosh, stage 1, there's a trigger. Immediately that trigger goes to stage 2, which is the secretion of safety hormones. Things, well, let me say it differently. Stress hormones that are designed to protect you. So now those stress hormones are going to be cortisol and adrenaline, and we need the cortisol to then generate glucose for energy for our muscles so that we can get to stage 3. Stage 3 is when we take action to escape the threat, and that's called fight, flight, or freeze. So that's stage 3. Stage 1 is the trigger. Stage 2 is the cortisol and glucose. Stage 3, fight, flight, freeze, take action. Okay, and we do those things like instantaneously, not consciously at all.
Hmm. Wow. Okay, back up. I heard cortisol, I heard glucose, and I immediately thought of stress eating.
Tell me where you're seeing that because that you're right. Tell me
Right.
a bit about where you're seeing the connection with
No,
it.
I heard that. And what's interesting is so you're saying that now I would like you to repeat that one more time. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. So say it one more time. Does it when we have a cortisol response, let's say,
Yes.
does it increase the need for glucose or no?
But you don't need to go eat it. That
Don't need to
happens
go eat
later.
it.
It's because we have enough for surviving. We have enough for surviving.
I see.
Yeah. So we have stores of adrenaline, we have stores of cortisol, we have stores of glucose. Otherwise, we'd be dead. We all have enough that if there is a trigger, it's going to shoot it immediately.
Wow. That's
Mhm.
interesting. That's very fascinating.
Right.
It's
And
a
you're going to
it
start to
sounds
see how this connects with other things in a moment.
Oh,
Because
okay.
right? Because everybody
Yeah.
talks about, too much glucose and too much cortisol is bad. And it's true. Too much in the blood,
Mhm.
metabolic disorders, diabetes, heart attacks, aging, all that stuff. And so this is what's very cool about the science, right? We need this to happen so that we can go into fight, flight, or freeze. We need that energy. We need that immediate, a quick boost. And remember what I said about how when you have cortisol, you can't think, like
Mhm.
your prefrontal cortex goes offline. That's by design. I want you to think about being, let's say you're a deer out in the savannah, and you know you hear a sound. There's that trigger. The cortisol and the adrenaline come, and then what if you had to pause and think, I wonder if that's a tiger. Oof, the tiger ate it. You don't want to think. You can't. You have to pattern match. That organ, that brain has to pattern match for us to survive. It's kind of like shoot first, ask questions later. So,
Right.
but though that's how we evolved over hundreds of millions of years, is that we cannot control this pattern. And it is really good. I want you to think about all the times that it has saved you. We want to be grateful to it. Speaking of gratitude, right?
Yeah. No, I appreciate you bringing that in. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Because a lot of the time we hate this because it feels awful when we're stressed out or when we're anxious. Or, I'm going to tell you like things like annoyance, that's also trigger. If you're feeling annoyed about something or frustrated, you're triggered. You got
Okay.
cortisol.
I'm annoyed 24 hours a day. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're not. Tell them. Good. We go and but it's like if you recognize that those emotions are like basically all the emotions that feel negative are the survival emotions. There's 6 base emotions that psychologists talk about that we all have. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, the first one, they only deal with the first 5. They don't deal with one of them. But the 6 emotions are largely negative and defensive. You know, you're going to have sadness, you're going to have disgust, you're going to have anger, you're going to have fear, and then over here you have joy.
Right.
And poor Joy is like trying to suppress these, which is what happens in our society, by the way. But
Yeah.
as that movie tells us, you need all of us. If you're curious about the 6th one, it's surprise. And surprise can either feel scary or not scary. Most of the time, I think it tends to fall into surprise, like startle. So even though, like, so think about it. 5 out of those 6 base emotions are meant for us to survive. So we want to like ignore it, but we're taught that, well, we should be joyful all the time. Oh no, let me hide those sad emotions or the fear. Stop being afraid. But those are necessary. Those are the ones that kick in when we have a trigger. Then you have the cortisol and adrenaline, and then you go into fight, flight, freeze. So does that make sense so far? We got those 3.
Yeah, I think so. And is that kind of like, we hear the term toxic positivity when we try to suppress the other emotions that are normal and
Yes.
natural? Is that
So
right?
I want to tell you about that in a moment because
Sure,
this
yeah.
is exactly it. Like why, what's going on? So that
Mhm.
4th phase, it's super important. This is what animals in the wild do. This is what we are designed to do, is that once we have escaped the threat after doing fight, flight, freeze, we have to release the cortisol. And then we come back down to normal. So you release the cortisol.
We don't do that well enough.
Right. Guess why?
Why? Why don't we do that well?
Because it requires emotional expression.
And we're taught to suppress our emotions, aren't we?
Yes.
It's all coming full circle. Oh my God, it's all coming full circle.
Isn't that crazy? But there's something behind that madness that seems maddening. And I want to explain why it makes sense, right? So let me explain first what happens with animals. I know you have a dog.
Yep.
Very cute little boy.
Yep.
And if you've ever seen dogs together, you imagine like there's a dog and then they're like, "Hurr," and they're like facing each other and they're kind of like hackles up, let's say. And then rather than fighting, they realize I can just back down and exist. I don't have to go into fight. Like we can just kind of avoid each other and step away, right? But what happens when they do that is they have to shake off the cortisol. That is why dogs will.
They shake it. They literally shake it off.
They shake it off, shake it like a Polaroid picture, Taylor Swift, shake it off. They shake it off. So what that is, it's literally releasing the adrenaline and the cortisol and using up that extra glucose so they could feel better. I have cats. So our cats, they don't tend to shake, but what they do is they will stretch, they will yawn, they will start like scratching. They'll lick themselves. Those are all ways that cortisol gets released. Okay. And I'm not saying that humans should go shake and lick themselves.
I was going to say, what's my secret? Susie, what do I need to do?
All right. Well, one of the ways we can do this with the stress reduction, I think a lot of people already do. And I'm going to tell you what's good about it and also what the challenge is, why it's not enough. So the thing that I think a lot of us do is we exercise.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
That's the equivalent of shaking, right? So, you want to, go pound out a few miles, whatever it takes.
But I wish I was a runner. I can't. I'll never get the runner's high, I don't think, but I wish I could.
That's okay.
Exercise is a good.
I know you're a hiker though.
Yeah, I like hiking. Hiking.
And we all have the ways that we could like expend the energy physically. Guess what the problem is with that?
The problem with exercise?
Not the problem with only relying on exercise.
Oh. Well, it's not practical all day long. That's a problem.
That is
Okay, I got it right?
yeah. It's not practical because see, the stress is not the problem. It's stress accumulation that's the problem. So cortisol is not a problem. It's cortisol accumulation that's the problem. And when you accumulate enough cortisol and you're not releasing it, that's when you have burnout, you have anxiety, you have panic disorders. I guess I shouldn't say that because I'm not a psychologist, but I do know, and I have worked with people who have panic disorders where basically paying attention to their triggers and releasing cortisol as they go prevents them, things like that, right? But but that's the thing is that when we start holding it down until the end of the day when we want to run, if you've got a bunch of accumulated stress, chances are you're tired. You get home brain dead. You're probably not going to exercise. And if you do, what you're doing is you're still not dealing it's sort of like you're doing all or nothing. You're going like, here's a trigger, here's a trigger. I'm going to lower myself down so you can see it. Here's the trigger. And we're up to here. And then maybe at the end of the day, we get down here. But we never like we're holding it all this time. I like to think of it as like, every stress trigger that builds up a little cortisol and then we stay in fight, flight, freeze. A lot of us stay in fight. We think we're being productive, but you're using cortisol. It's like you're drinking a little water. You're drinking a little water. You're drinking a little water. You're not allowed to go to the bathroom. You're not allowed to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it just builds up and accumulates. And
Yeah,
if we think about in our bodies, there's that saying the body keeps the score, right?
absolutely.
So it just builds up and builds up. And I feel like, all right, I'm really resonating with this because I'm flashing back to my corporate days, right? When I felt like you were saying in the beginning of the conversation, you walk into the room and you just feel angst and
Yes.
right? That accumulated stress just stays in your body and it leads to, we know this, like we know stress leads to sickness, it leads to heart disease, it leads to chronic inflammation.
Yep, it leads to Hashimoto's, thyroid disease. I've worked with leaders of all kinds when I was doing more one-on-one coaching, which I still do, but I'm also a speaker and I do workshops. But as a one-on-one coach, I've had leaders who come who on the outside, I mean, they're type A personalities, they're
Right.
super driven, they're super competent, but their bodies are breaking down
Mm.
because they're just taking on so much and they don't know how to delegate. They don't know how to pause and manage the stress.
Yeah.
And it starts to become a problem. And I hate to say that, but I see it all the time with type A leaders.
And, as a leader of an organization, you set the temperature.
Yep. Oh, that's so good.
You
Yes.
set the temperature. And I think, that I have a dear friend and a client of mine who he has a podcast. Everybody check it out. MPWR podcast. It's great. And
Mhm.
he talks about this. He had a recent episode where he said, you can be the leader that sets the temperature or you can be the thermostat.
That's good.
That stuck with me, right? I think that's true for us, that how are we actually showing up? And
Yeah,
some of this most of it sounds like it's unconscious, right?
it is. And that's the thing. Like, that's why I don't want to like shame people
Right.
who push themselves and push other people past their capacity. But I do want to call it out that it's an unconscious pattern we have, and it really is based
Mhm.
on how we fail to complete the stress cycle. And I want to explain this other part of the stress cycles. It's not just the
Mhm.
physical part, right?
Right.
Animals, it's not just like I shake it off and I feel better. If an animal is really triggered, they, the other emotional part is that they have to connect with their safe pack.
Go back to their community, back
Go
to
back to
their
the pack. Right. We are
flock.
pack animals. Yeah. The flock,
Mhm.
the pack. I say the pack in part because um I always just think of, not in the negative sense of pack mentality, but more in the sense of pack security. I always think of, Game of Thrones, and when the winter comes, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives.
Yeah.
I also happen to be a grad of NC State, and so we have Wolfpack Nation.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I was
But
gonna say.
but it applies to everyone. You don't have to be an NC State fan to recognize that it doesn't work to be a lone wolf. And I think some people know that, but they're not quite getting that part of that means also being vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because what happens is we don't talk to other people about our emotions. And what happens is when animals, escape the threat, they expressed emotions to each other. So let me give you an example. Let's say, so I live, for those of you who are familiar with North Carolina, I live in Durham, beautiful North Durham, and the back of my property is adjacent to Eno River State Park, one of the most wonderful state parks we have. We get a lot of deer. Deer in my backyard eating the plants. I've given up on hostas. Let's just, yeah. And here's what happens. I love observing the deer because they help me understand how our nervous systems work. So if I go outside to throw out something in the recycling bin and there's a bunch of deer and say there's one deer that's a little closer, it's going to freak out. The ones that are further away, not quite freak out because they're just like that. But the one that's close is like, run to its friends. And if it's really scared, it's going to drive them all away. Like they're all going to be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Right. And which is what we're supposed to do. They have no idea that I'm not going to hurt them.
Right.
But so it's actually good that they're scared of me. But here's the thing. I want you to imagine what would happen if we humans were doing that. Let's say one of us got startled by something that wasn't actually a threat and the other people are over here. If this person came over here to the other people and said, oh my God, that was scary, chances are what we would tell that other person is, what are you scared about? It was nothing. Or, oh my God, are you okay? Let me fix this. And then you freak out more. Or maybe, they ignore them. Or they're like, well, don't be a crybaby. And that's how we tend to treat that, which is why then that human won't go to their pack and be like, that was really scary. Because they've been told so many times to get over it. Boys don't cry. I'll give you something to cry about. There's nothing wrong. Just get over it. Just change your mindset. Right?
Yeah. Yep. I've heard that.
But here's what the deer do. The deer, this one gets triggered. Let's see, this one gets triggered. Runs over here, finds its friend and said, oh my God, that was so scary. I heard the sound. And this one is going to be like, yeah, that does sound scary. Lick the deer and be like, okay, let's see her hydrangeas now. But you want to get the difference that the way the deer do it, they go from here. They know they're safe. They don't just shake. They actually come to their safe pack and communicate, not through words, but through visual, through body. Like, that was scary. The other one's like, yeah, lick, lick, lick. Okay, let's eat the hydrangeas. And that's the secret to success for humans too, that when you find your safe pack and you can actually be like, yeah, that was scary. You knock that cortisol out in like minutes and you get back to work. Imagine what it would be like if we knew that our emotional expression, like I got really triggered or I got really stressed out or I'm really anxious because I just got another project and I don't know how I'm going to handle it with these other things. To be able to say that and be like, I'm scared that I'm not going to meet the deadline. I'm scared that I'm not going to do a good job. I'm scared they're going to fire me if I don't get this done. When you can say that to somebody who is safe and the other person just witnesses, doesn't try to fix, doesn't try to tell them, just says, God, that makes sense. You feel that way. How can I support you? Cortisol drops. Safety resets. And at that point, the person who's stressed out, their brain comes back online. Their prefrontal cortex comes back online. Then they're able to be like, no, I think I'm good. Thanks for listening. I think what I need to do is blah. And they find their own solutions. Wow. But what happens is we're preventing people from finding our own solutions because our society has taught us that emotion, like naming your emotions is shameful. When in really it's just biology. It's our human version of what the deer licking looks like. Because we have to name the emotion to tame it. There's actually science behind this called affect labeling. And it's not just naming it, but then we just need to have a witness who gets it, doesn't try to fix, is just like, yeah, it makes sense you feel that way. How can I support you?
Wow. That is so powerful. So what I'm hearing is a lot of a lot of us are walking around with pent up cortisol in our
Mhm.
bodies and we're not releasing it. So what I'm hearing is we're not completing the stress cycle.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
We just stay stuck in level 3, and you can do that for a long time. You can do I did wanna say one other thing about that. I mentioned fight, flight, freeze. Um, I wanna mention that a lot of people, particularly those of us that had, undiagnosed trauma, and that could also mean things like having ADHD, that was undiagnosed, and so you were corrected so many more times your whole life that that is a trauma too. Like, you're just like, "Okay, there's something wrong with me." That was me. I have both the complex PTSD through traumatic events and different kinds of upraising things, and the ADHD that was just recently diagnosed, and realizing, "Oh, look, that's that's interesting." It's like, if you have enough people tell you what's wrong with you, why can't you just, because you have because you have a biological underpinning that requires you to use a lot of cortisol, because ADHD is a dopamine deficit, then that creates more trauma too. And so then you're always like, "Ooh, I can't let them see my emotions. I can't let them know that I'm stressed out. I gotta fake it till I make it."
Oh God. I cringe every time someone says that. You know it. And we've talked about that too. That's,
Yes.
my least favorite advice for building confidence is just fake it till you make it. It's like that is not real. How did we come to the point as a society where that's real advice? And it's like, oh my gosh, right? And it's sad in a way because I feel like a lot of people just don't have the tools. And that's why I started this show. And that's
Yeah,
why I have you on today because we're talking about real tools and real solutions for long term sustainable success, right?
right.
So that is so, oh my gosh, you're speaking my language, Susie.
Of course. That's why we get along so well.
That's why we get along so
Eh,
well.
we have a mission to help people with this beyond, it's all mindset.
It, that's right. And I love some mindset conversations, but I don't believe it's the only answer.
Exactly. It's all mindset is the part that, it's the all part.
That's right. And I want to bring up something that you said a little earlier ago, and that's we talked about regulated nervous system. I had a podcast recording I did last week. It hasn't aired yet,
Mhm.
but we were talking about money. And it occurred to me that everybody who's uber successful that I've interviewed for this podcast, like multimillionaires or billionaires, I was trying to think of all of the common things they have.
Mhm.
And one of them was a regulated nervous system. I realized that, during the interviews that I've had, that they are the calmest people in the room.
Mm.
What do you think about that? Because again, I want to really help people, you know, cross this bridge to where they're feeling a lot of pent up stress in their body. And again, that body keeps the score to giving them the tools to complete that stress cycle and to regulating their nervous systems. But it's not easy because, to your point, a lot of us have experienced trauma
Mhm.
and uncertainty and comments and insults and why can't you do this right all the time? So it's not easy, right? How do we get there, Susie?
Oh, wonderful question. I think the first thing is admitting we have a problem.
Isn't that the truth? I know it.
It is, because I didn't know I had or admitting there's a problem and figuring out what the actual problem is. One
Yeah,
of the
what's
things
the root
that,
cause?
right, because I've told you a little bit about my past, and I had a lot of trauma growing up. Um, Trigger warning.
Yeah.
My I came into this world through rape. So I'm actually a first gen Mexican American, and I don't look it because my biological father was white, and he was my mom's landlord, right?
Yeah.
Um and that the first thing is understanding that pretty certain I was swimming in cortisol in my mom's womb. So I'm baking in it, right?
Yeah.
So that impacts us. We also have also things like intergenerational trauma. Like that has that has probably happened to many people that they've never spoken of it, that maybe they or somebody in their generational past was raped and somebody in the family came as a result. Those things, epigenetics tells us that that is going to change how genes show up. And again, this is a really smart adaptation. If somebody else was raped, maybe you want to like develop the stressed out vigilant gene so you don't either, right? Like it's all unconscious. This is biology working. This is what evolution does, is that you learn biologically, unconsciously, our bodies learn to adapt to potential threats. And so we're more sensitive, means we have more cortisol. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that I did grow up in poverty. My maternal grandmother, who had a third grade education from Mexico, raised us, and she had a lot of trauma. She was very angry. So I was abused. I was hit. I was yelled at. I mean, from a very young age, what I most remember is being told, no seas llorona, don't be a crybaby. And I always remember la chancla, the shoe. Mexicans, parents will hit their kids. And sometimes we make a joke out of it. If you ever see the movie Coco, the grandmother throws the shoe at the kid and it hits him like he's like miles away from the house and it still finds him. And it's funny, but it's still abuse and it's still traumatic when you're young. But those things then were part of what made me scared from the beginning of my life. Like I just was born into fear. And I know you're familiar with that too. Like you had a pretty rough upbringing as well.
That's right.
Um, and and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who are successful who have our kind of background and maybe haven't done this work yet.
Exactly. Because I've done a lot of work. This was not
Right.
an overnight switch.
No, it is not an overnight thing, but it has to begin with the recognition. And this is what I like. This is one of my catchphrases. It's like it wasn't me. I'm not broken. I'm biological. And for all of us, when we have strong emotions based on past trauma that hasn't been resolved, or you have strong emotions because maybe you didn't have past trauma, but you are a woman and now your hormones are out of whack. Or maybe you have undiagnosed ADHD, and so you don't have enough dopamine, and so you're constantly cortisol driven, and you have just that built-in anxiety. Or maybe you're a highly sensitive person, an HSP, of which in every species, there's 15 to 30% of the population for every species that survives, not just humans, are that because they are necessary for various things for a species to survive, including humans. So we have like a whole, I mean, if you put all those numbers together, I'm sure there's at least 50% of us, probably more, when we think about men who are coming out of the womb way more sensitive. There's studies on this. Boys that are born, boys born as male out of the womb are highly sensitive, more sensitive than women, than girls. But what happens is that they are immediately told, boys don't cry, you need to suppress it. So from that point until they hit puberty and they start getting testosterone, they're having to learn to suppress. And then when the testosterone comes, that helps suppress the emotions. Like that's a known thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of people that have a lot of suppressed cortisol and shame around feeling emotions. And the key thing is when we feel it, because I mean, it feels icky. Here's the thing, cortisol has to feel icky in the body for a good reason. The reason cortisol feels icky in the body is that if we didn't notice, the tiger would eat us.
That's right. We
Right?
need it.
Remember that deer in the woods, it's asleep, it senses a sound, there's cortisol shoots up. If that cortisol didn't feel uncomfortable, it would keep sleeping and it would get eaten. So cortisol always feels icky. It's tied to these strong emotions that we want to cry because either we're furious or we're terrified or we feeling so much like energy that's in there. It's designed to save us. So the key thing is that there's a lot of us who are out there on the surf, they look great. They look great. I looked great. I went from poverty to a PhD and I had a tenure-track job but then I burned out.
At
So
Brown University, by the way.
Brown,
You're
yeah.
forgetting that huge
Okay, Ivy
dream.
League, yes. But it was
Thank you.
thank you, my friend, for pointing. Brown looked place, by the way.
Of course.
But yeah, it was on top of all this like inability to really recognize that I was operating on top of a bunch of cortisol accumulation and I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to release it because our society doesn't teach us how. You have to be strong. Emotions are weakness. And so that's the thing that thankfully we now have this new science, neuroscience that's teaching us how powerful it is that if you want to have confidence, if you want to be successful, if you want to go from surviving to thriving, you need to find a pack and a safe group of people that you can speak your emotions to, who will witness you and not shame you and not try to fix you.
That's not easy, and I feel like it's a challenge sometimes to find your tribe, you know? But when you do, it really does it changes everything. And it's so interesting because some of the times the things that we've had in our past that maybe we didn't want to have happen to us, maybe the traumas, maybe the things that we feel ashamed about
Yeah.
are actually what binds us to some of the tribe members that we find, people that have healed, right? That have maybe experienced something similar to us.
I
That
think
they
that's how
carry
I
with
feel about you, and that's
yeah.
probably how you feel about me, is that we don't shame each other. We validate and understand the pain and
Mhm.
the work we've done and what's on the other side. And we're also both aligned in our mission to share that with as many people as we can because it's so powerful.
Yes. That's why I admire you as well, one of the reasons, because of your willingness to share. And obviously, this is not easy, talking about
Mhm.
the things in our life that have caused us trauma or pain. But that's how we progress. That's how we, again, find our tribe. That's how we level
Mhm.
this, playing field of life a little bit is by first naming it. I think you're right about that. Naming it to taming it, identifying that root cause, and then healing ourselves with immense compassion.
Yeah. But the healing here's the thing that I like to say too is that the thing that caused us harm we can was that absence of witnessing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That when we're feeling some kind of way and our society just tries or our caretakers tell us to stop crying as opposed to like, oh, it sounds like you're upset. What's going on? You know, things like that. So that's just a simple example, but that is kind of where it begins is and I don't blame parents for this. I know that I get triggered by people who are upset. Even though I'm somebody who gets upset, I get triggered by that too. So it isn't that we have to be perfect, but I like to tell people, if it's not about being perfect and never being triggered by other people and reacting to them, but it's about recognizing when that happens and making reparations and cleaning it up. This is what has made my marriage to my husband phenomenal because I am emotional and being able to be like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I was really upset about
Mhm.
this other thing and I took it out on you. And that's a reason, not an excuse. I really apologize. And, I'm going to pay attention to when that happens next time so I don't do that. That's real amends. And then that cleans it up. That's what heals. That's also what him. So if somebody causes you harm and they never acknowledge it, that's what keeps us in the trauma. That's what keeps us in the fight, flight, freeze, cortisol churning. So one of the things that I will offer that as a definition of what trauma is, it's not the thing that happens. I'm sure you've heard some of this. It's not the thing that happens. It's that there wasn't a completion of the stress cycle. There was nobody to witness the emotions. And that's really critical because then the way we heal it is by witnessing the emotions.
Okay. So let's go through a scenario.
Mhm.
Let's say I get annoyed, really annoyed.
Yay!
Yay! Let's
Annoying.
say I get really annoyed by something, right? Or triggered, whatever, however you want to call it, and I'm stressed.
Mhm.
What do I do next? Do I go to my community? Do I go to you, Susie, and say, Susie, you're like, don't call me 100 times a day. What is the next step I should do if I find myself and I've identified that and said, okay, I think I'm triggered. What do I do next?
Such a good question. I got an answer for you. Back to name entertainment. That's all you had to do. The first step is to go, whoa, I'm really annoyed right now. Here's why that's important. When you can name it, the reason it works, name it to tame it, is that when we name the emotion, we have now stepped outside of ourselves and see it as a thing. It is no longer in us and who we are. We've now named it. We are observing it. That is the first interruption. So that now it that actually starts to lower the cortisol. Okay.
Just by naming it,
Just
just
by naming
by
it.
putting a label on it. Okay.
Just putting a label on it.
Okay.
And the important thing is that you have to name the emotion. It's not like, oh, these people are annoying me. It's because then you're blaming them and then you are triggering yourself to be like, these people are annoying. And then that's a new trigger when we say certain things or we think thoughts. Oh, they shouldn't be acting that way. Bing, more cortisol. Oh, people should be different. Bing. Or it could be, oh, I should be different. I shouldn't be feeling that way. Those are triggers, right?
Right.
The difference is saying, I'm feeling annoyed right now by what they said.
Okay. So I'm feeling annoyed by what they said. Got it.
Yeah, or I'm feeling annoyed right now and I don't know why, which is fine. Just be like, I'm feeling annoyed right now. You're going to get the physiological side when you actually name it.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And you don't try to go into your brain and figure it out yet.
Okay.
The key is that
Yeah.
when we are triggered enough, it's never just one emotion. It is usually a cocktail of emotions, a very potent cocktail. What you want to think about, let me see if I can find this pen because I love demonstrating this. I have this pen of many colors. Remember those from the
Oh gosh. I love
growing
my
up?
daughter has one of those. I love those. Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So for those of you who are listening and not watching, I'm holding one of those big pens. They
Okay.
have like those 4-color things on there.
Yeah. What's
But
your favorite one to color with? What's your favorite?
oh, blue,
Blue?
blue.
Yeah. Like that.
But here's the thing. I want you to think that if it was a simple emotion, we wouldn't have a problem with it. It's that it starts to accumulate. I'm going to give you an example. True example.
Okay.
When I first started getting into LinkedIn, um, when somebody would send me an invite to connect, I would be thrilled, especially if there was somebody who I thought was really cool. And it's like, oh my God, they seem so cool. I'm so excited.
Mm-hmm.
And so I accepted an invite from somebody.
I
And
know where this is
you know
going.
where this is going? They immediately pitch slapped me.
Yes, they did. That's how it works. Welcome to LinkedIn.
This was about 2 or 3 years ago. I've definitely outgrown this, but this is what I had to do. Like I was so upset.
Because you generally thought they wanted to connect with you, and that it ended up they had ulterior motives of sorts, right?
Sort of, but here was the thing. I went into a freeze, and I was just like,
Oh gosh.
I went into a freeze about it, and because I didn't understand what was happening yet. Like, now I could name it because I've named it, and this is why naming it to tame it is important, because then you learn what it is and you get better at noticing it, right? Like, now I could tell and it doesn't bother me. But that first time, I was so triggered. And when I try to talk to people about it, at this point, I was part of a coaching community where mindset is everything.
Yeah, where's that
I would be
pom-pom?
like, well, what are your thoughts about that? You should just change how you think about it. Both. All I needed was somebody to witness me. And thankfully I did, I think I don't know who I found. At some point I figured out, like, I had to do the work, and I realized I got to figure out what these different emotions are. And what it was is, so if we think about this pen, it was all the emotions I had, and they can't all come out at once. If I could name one, I could do, here, this is blue, this is black. Oh, look, this is green. Okay, this is blue, this is red. We name it, right? So what I had to do was figure out that there were multiple emotions, and that's why my ink was stuck. It didn't want to come out. So what I realized is, I was mad. So I was like, I'm really mad that she's just trying to shill me. And then the other part was, I'm really sad that she's just trying to shill me,
Hmm.
because I wanted to have a relationship. And then here's the mixer to this cocktail that always keeps us stuck. And I feel shame because I think I shouldn't be overreacting.
Yeah.
Can you get that?
Yes.
That
Ye
shame of, like, so the initial trigger was, I'm mad, cortisol, and I'm sad, cortisol. But then we add the shame. The shame keeps me from just releasing the anger and the sadness. The shame becomes, I shouldn't be reacting like this. Ding! I now got another cortisol hit. And then, oh my God, I'm still reacting and I'm still stuck. There's something wrong with me. Ding! And so that becomes the shame spiral, and that's where we get stuck.
Can I just say it was probably an automated message too, so there was no human on the other side?
No, it was because I had a conversation.
Oh, did you?
It was the VA.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was the VA who was like, this was 3 years ago
VA.
for the automation. They had a VA copying and pasting the same thing.
Exactly, it's all copy and paste, right? That's so funny, and it's so true. Oh my gosh, there's so much wisdom in here because, again, I feel like we hear this word trigger a lot, right? We see it on the news, we see it on social media, and it's everywhere. And we don't know how to properly handle if something does trigger us and activate us in a way. And I think this completing of the stress cycle is really beneficial for people because we are walking around, so much of our body is walking around which is held onto cortisol. And
Yes.
we have to ask ourselves as leaders, as high performers,
Yes.
how is this making me show up in the world? How is this making, what impact is this creating? Because I think so much of our lives we live on autopilot, that subconscious mind.
Hmm.
And I think when we name it, it really helps take us out of that subconscious a little bit and bring us to that conscious level of, okay, this is actually happening. I'm going to put a label on it. I'm going to start to change, start
It's gonna
to,
have to change. And I will tell you, there's a second part to that. That what I teach people, and this might sound silly, but there's science. Um, I'm gonna and I do want to make sure I explain a little bit more about what the power of affect labeling is, because it's not just that you feel better, you perform better, and I want to be able to share that.
ooh, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the other part is, like, once you notice and be like, I'm feeling really annoyed. You go, I'm holding up my pom pom. Yay me! I noticed I'm being really annoyed. This is good, Because when you notice it, you now made the unconscious conscious. And after decades of being told to suppress our emotions and not admit we have a negative emotion, our biology, it's like a poor beaten dog. It needs it needs a treat. It needs to be retrained. This is called self-directed neuroplasticity. And what's the number one treat brains like? Dopamine.
Dopamine.
Brains love dopamine. And I'm not, and the thing is, you don't want to go get chocolate to get dopamine, because then that's not, chocolate's great. But what I'm talking about is the natural fast dopamine. This is what BJ Fogg from Stanford talks about, is that we need to celebrate noticing the small things that are going to give us the life we want. So it's not about waiting until I'm never triggered. Otherwise, you're never not going to be triggered. You have to celebrate noticing. And then after a while, you start celebrating the next thing. Oh, I was able to take a breath, because that would be the next thing. Okay, let me, if you inhale and exhale longer than your inhale, you're triggering the parasympathetic, which is the system that is rest and digest. You're calming your nervous system down, you're releasing it. And then it's those things that then allow you to use your prefrontal cortex and solve the problem. You'll now be able to see there may be validity. I always like to say there's at least 10% validity in any trigger, because there is that if, for example, if you're annoyed, tell me the last thing you were annoyed at.
Oh gosh, how much time do we have? We'll just say I'm just gonna pick something I saw on TV, something on the news. How about that?
Okay, so you saw something on the news that annoyed you, maybe something people are saying or doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when you're able to be like, I'm really annoyed by what they said, not like they're annoying or they shouldn't be saying that, because that's just going to make you, again, that's going to create more stress. But it's really more like, I feel really annoyed by what they're saying. Yay me for noticing. Okay, so what is annoying me about what they're saying? Then now you start thinking like, I'm annoyed because they seem to think X, Y, or Z, or they should be doing this other thing. And it's like, oh, okay. And a lot of times our annoyance comes from shoulds. And so the secret to that is to be able to say, rather than saying it shouldn't be happening, they shouldn't be saying this, is to say, I wish it wasn't happening, but it is. Psychological sigh. Where do I have control of this?
Yes.
So that's some of the ways.
Wow. That's so powerful. When I first started this podcast, I interviewed someone named Donna Starr. She was talking about her past experience in corporate as an EVP for her company. And she said she was so stressed to the point where she couldn't digest. And you said rest and digest. So I picked that up. And she remarked during our podcast recording that she came to the point where she couldn't digest salad anymore.
Yeah.
So I think, our body a lot of times does tell us, and sometimes our bodies are actually a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
They're a
And
ton smarter.
they're so smart, and we push and suppress and say, it's fine, right? It's fine if I'm not digesting my food properly. It's fine. This rash is normal. It's fine if I feel like I can't breathe. I don't know why we tell ourselves these things, right?
You do know what we tell ourselves. Why do we tell ourselves that?
Why do we tell ourselves? I don't know. I guess it makes us feel
It's what we learned.
it's what we learn. Yeah.
We've been told to override our bodies. And I will say that it didn't used to be that way. It really started happening. So, my PhD is in American lit and culture and history from like 19th century. I will tell you that it started in, late 19th century, the more mechanized things became.
Wow.
There's a reason, one of my pet peeve words, I know a lot of people talk about wanting to be more productive. That comes from being a producer and being a machine.
Mm.
And so when, thanks to, that is how we now see ourselves.
We see ourselves as machines that are only here to produce and make things.
Right, and so we think, well, our brain should be able to, like, if I'm strong enough, I should be able to think my way through it.
Oh,
If you keep
wow.
doing that, your body's gonna break, and
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
That
So
is
that's
super.
why we do it. And so that's almost like why I think that, we all have trauma, not just some of the things I was saying. We all have trauma. We all have the trauma of living in a capitalist society that tells us we need to suppress our emotions and be good producers and do it alone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That is so true. Susie, I think everybody who is listening to this right now can benefit from this conversation. Anybody who is a leader of an organization could benefit from you coming and helping with their team because, the modern workforce, we're experiencing the most amount of change than we've ever experienced. And ultimately, it's as slow now as it'll ever be. Technology is increasing at a really fast pace, and a lot of people aren't sure. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. So I think this work and what you do can tremendously impact organizations as a whole, and leaders in general in deleting happier lives, more fulfilled lives, learning how to simple tools like how to completing the stress cycle so that it doesn't hold in your body. I mean, that just
Yeah.
screams health and wellness to me and longevity.
But I also want to bring this also to the bottom line, because it actually helps the bottom line. This,
Yes,
this
it does.
right. I just want to say a little bit
Yeah.
about that, because this isn't about, kumbaya in the break room or group therapy on Zoom,
It's exactly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It is not about that at all. And I wanted to mention that study that showed how affect labeling actually gives you better results,
Yeah.
because I think that's super important. So there was a study where I believe it was both high school and college math students were being given uh, a final exam. And so the study had 3 groups, so you had a couple control groups. One group did nothing. No, they just did the normal thing. They prepared for the test and they took the test. Second group, they were asked to write beforehand what they thought would be on the test. The third group was asked to write down how they were feeling about the test, their emotions. Guess which group performed the best?
The feelers?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, they outperformed the people who were thinking about what might be on the test and the people who did nothing,
Hmm.
because they named it to tame it. They were like, I'm nervous about this. I don't know if I know that. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, let me go take the test. Now their brain is clear. They're not filled with cortisol. They could focus on the task. And that is why when you can bring this to your groups and organizations, your people will be far more productive. And it also creates psychological safety when it is the norm. Again, not kumbaya, but when it is the norm that people can simply say, hey, like you create enough relationships and capacity for people to feel safer in each other. So they could go be in like, hey, this new project, I'm really stressed out about it because of this. Do you have a couple minutes? And the other person knows how to receive that. Like I teach them how to receive it. And so much of it really is 2 sentences. It makes sense that you feel that way. And how can I support you? Those are the key sentences where we don't have to be stressed trying to fix their problems and those kinds of things. And I think the key, what I really want to do is work with managers, because guess what? Managers are being so pressured right now. The Gallup polls are talking about, oh, there's no psychological safety, there's no resilience. It's because the managers need to do more work connecting with their teams. And they don't know how to do it. They think they have to spend hours with each one, Or, okay, I need to keep a list of, Bob really likes chocolate and Sarah has, 3 dogs. And so I have to remember to be like, hey, Sarah, how are your 3 dogs? As if that's going to create connection and psychological safety. When really, when a manager learns and when the group, the team learns that all they have to do is be like, hey, can I just share something that's going on with me because it's kind of stressing me out? Do you have 5 minutes now or later? Then you go in and they're all trained to understand that all you have to do is it's like, well, I'm really stressed out by this thing because I'm not sure about that thing and I'm not sure it's going to work. Manager says, gosh, it makes sense you feel that way. What else is going on? Well, then there's this other thing because, John over at the other, division isn't giving me what I need. It's like, wow, it makes sense. What else is going on? And then by the end, when that person finishes saying, the manager can be like, so tell me how I can support you.
Mm.
You don't try to fix it.
Ooh.
That person is either going to say, you know what? I feel better. I think I know what to go talk to that guy, John, about. And I think I know what to do over here. Or that person will be like, well, can you talk to John's manager? Because I feel like John's not being responsive and I don't feel like I have the power to do that. Then you go, cool, I'll go talk to John's manager. What else? How else can I support you? That creates independence in your person because as soon as that cortisol goes down because they're being witnessed, they come up with their own solutions. But if we try to fix it for them, they never learn. If we try to tell them what to do without validating, it's valid that you're stressed out, of course. We're basically making them operate on top of cortisol, and that does not create safety. And that does not create results. So this is a key thing for any organization, team, business, community.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
The mental image I have in my mind as you were talking was before we do all of this, it feels like we have a million tabs open in our brain. And then every time we express, a tab gets closed down and it feels a little breather.
I love that metaphor.
You like that metaphor?
Okay, I do.
Cool.
Well, because every emotion, like if you look at the windows you have open, it kind of is, right? Like every window, every tab, it's some bit of unresolved cortisol that hasn't been named or released.
Oh,
no wonder your computer's running sluggish, my friend.
Yes. So if you're feeling a little sluggish, close those tabs out, everybody.
And yeah, and the key really is like just find one person that you can trust and share what you learned today. Share that, hey, you're not broken, you're biological. We're all biological. None of us have been taught how to complete the stress cycle because we have been told emotions are shameful, but that's really the way to release the cortisol and reconnect with yourself and get back into action from a place of power, confidence, and being dopamine driven instead of cortisol driven, right?
Ooh, what is nice? That's a nice.
Yeah, because that's it. And the only way to be to stop being cortisol driven is to name it to tame it. That's what is required.
Wow.
No shame.
Wow. I love that.
So find your safe pack, my friends.
Yes, find your safe pack. You are part of my pack, Susie.
You are
mine. Where can everybody connect with you, find you, learn more about your work? And obviously, you have a ton of amazing things happening right now. If you want to highlight any of those things, but tell us where we can learn more about you.
Well, you can visit my website, which is susiehansley.com. And that is the way it's spelled on there. It'll probably be on the
show notes. Yep.
On the show notes. But if you're just hearing it's susiehansley.com. And my favorite place to connect is on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people and supporting each other. Yep. So I would love for you to reach out and connect with me there.
Awesome. Well, Susie, it was such a pleasure interviewing you today. And I think this will be, we'll just put a pin in it, part 1.
Yeah, we'll come back and have more because there's more. There's more.
There's so much more to talk about that we have literally just gotten started. Even though it was an hour we talked today, I feel like I could talk to you for 5. But yeah, we'll put a pin on it, part 1, and we'll get you back on the show for sure. Everybody connect with Susie on LinkedIn, visit her website, and hire her as a speaker and a workshop facilitator for your organization, for your team. She will transform it. I can guarantee you. She's amazing. All right, everyone, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Grasp Confidence Podcast. Please leave a review on Apple with your favorite takeaway from this episode. What did Susie teach you? What did you learn that you are going to now apply in your life or in your organization, on your team? We would love to hear it, and I read each review personally. We will see you on the next episode. Take care.